Okay, so in our last video, we created these tiles, we gave them colors. They're going off screen right now, so we want to fix that. And we also want to add the floor in this video. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get kind of a basic bounding box. We're just going to check each of the tiles in the piece and see if it's, make sure it stays on screen, both on the right side and on the floor. The left side is working right now because we're checking the upper left square. So let's start with that, and then we will move on to adding these pieces to the floor. All right, so if we look back at our code, we can go down to the piece. So we want to go into our update loop, and I'm going to do this a little bit differently. I'm going to actually swap these. So I'm going to say I'm going to return early if the position is greater than or equal to the height, instead of updating the position if the position is less than the height. So this will set us up a little bit better for later when we want to check the floor. And actually left, let me do this for left too. So position Y less than or equal to 0. Going to return early. And move right, I'm going to do the same thing. Greater than or equal to width. And the other thing we're going to do here is check position Y plus the length of the shape. So the length of the shape is the number of rows. So length, shape.length is greater than the height. Don't need to do anything here. We want to check the X position, and in moving right, we want to check the X position plus the length of the first row. Shape 0, length. And that's because all of our rows are going to be the same length. So we can check any of those. So the other way we could do this is we could check to see, we can give a piece kind of some functions to say, like, it is right, or that's a terrible name. We could give basically we add on to the API here to say, like, right bound and left bound and upper bound, lower bound. For what we're doing here, I'm just going to keep it simple, I think, at least for now. Maybe we'll see if these get more complicated. I might just, basically if the logic here gets more complicated as far as the left and right side of the piece, I might change that. But for now, we're just going to check that. And it looks like things are working. So now our pieces are being bounded on the left side, the right side, and the floor. So that's great. All right, so let's move on to our floor. So if you remember, our floor is going to be another layer. So we have our background layer and our piece layer, and then we're going to have a floor layer. So if you think about our update function here, we're going to render the background, and then we're going to render our floor, and then we're going to render our piece. And we're probably also going to update the floor here, but for now I'm just going to render it. So if we need a floor, so let's go up to our pieces, and we have a piece, we have a background, so we need a floor. So we'll say create floor and create floor, or create flute. Okay, so create floor. Floor is going to need a render function because we just defined that. And it's also going to need some tiles. And what are those tiles going to be? That's going to be a two-dimensional array that's the same height as the board and the same width as the board. And each of them are going to be filled with a tile. And we're going to want to do some things with those tiles. So we're going to probably also have a create tile. We're going to create a tile entity. So if we do tiles, we'll have an array of it's the same length as the height, and we will fill it with another array. That's the width. And in here, we're going to fill this one with, we'll start out with an empty object, but that'll be a tile in one moment. Okay, so in our render function, we're going to iterate over the tiles, and we're going to render each of the tiles. So what does this tile render do? So we don't have anything yet. We just have an empty object in here. So let's create a tile. We're going to have a little API in here. This tile is going to have a color. And for now, that will be black. And then it'll also have an we'll say whether or not it's empty. So we could do have a null tile if we wanted. We don't have to have this is empty flag, but this allows us to say like just render the tile and let the tile keep track of whether or not it's empty, as opposed to something like if tile then render. It just keeps our calling code a little bit simpler, and I think that'll be better in the long run. All right, create tile is not defined, so we need to have a function that creates our tile, and that needs a render. And let's see, so our tile, we're going to need to create this with a color and is empty. Okay, so when we render our tiles, what do we want to do? For now, let's just say if it's empty, we're going to render a grid. We'll render like a box around it. And so we're going to do this with stroke style and stroke rect instead of fill style. So stroke style equals color. Actually, if it's empty, we'll say stroke style is white. And stroke rect. So this is going to be actually, we're going to take in an X and Y, and these are going to be tile size and tile size. So remember, it works the same as fill rect. So it's X, Y, and a height and width. Okay, and we're going to pass in X and Y here. So this is what we're going to do if we're empty. If we're not empty, we're going to do something else, and we will fill in that something else later. So, all right, let's see what we get here. So now we get an X and a Y. So our tile, create tile, colors defined but never used, that's okay. Let's log out the color, just so that lint error goes away. Is empty is not defined. So this should be true. When we initialize this array, this should be true. Okay, so I think we have our tiles should render now. Let's see if this works. No, of course it doesn't. What did we do wrong here? So we're rendering, creating floor. I think we forgot to add this to we're calling floor render. Okay. Let's see, floor.render. We have a floor, creating floor. What do our tiles look like? Okay, tile render. We need to pass in, right. We need to pass in an X and a Y here. So this is going to be row index and column index. And so our X is our column. Oops. Call index, and our Y is our row index. Okay, so now we should be rendering our tile, I think. Great, now we got a grid. That's what we want. So that looks good. Our so the next step is going to be moving these pieces into the floor. Okay, so for moving these pieces into the floor, we're going to need some way to coordinate the floor with the piece, right? So if we have our piece here, we somehow need to say, okay, if the piece gets to the bottom, transfer it to the floor. We could do that in a couple different ways. So we could either say we could do it here. We could update the floor here too, and we could kind of have the piece return its position and pass the position into the floor. It's one way to do it. Another way to do it is have the floor take the piece as an argument. So maybe when we create the floor or when we update the floor. So here we could say when we create the floor, we could pass the piece. My gut says let's pass the let's pass the floor to the piece. So the other way around, let's say pass floor here. And that way the piece will know when it hits the ground. It'll know when it hits either the bottom of the screen, or it'll know when it hits the existing floor. And the piece will be able to then say, all right, I'm going to reset myself to the top of the screen, and I'll get a new piece and a new color. And I will populate the floor squares, tiles, with whatever tiles are in the current piece. So let's see how that goes. We want to, so now the create piece takes a floor, and in our update, here's where we want to check the floor. Well, right now we just want to check the bottom. We want to check the bottom of the screen. So if we're at the bottom of the screen, we can, let's see, if we're at the bottom of the screen, we want to transfer to floor. We also want to reset the piece. So when we transfer to the floor, we don't want to have, we basically are giving up control of the piece. So I'm going to say piece.reset. Oh, I don't need to do piece here. I'm inside the piece. So I can just call reset. I need to define a reset function. And reset is basically going to do exactly what's on these lines. So what's on lines 104 to 107, we want to do that inside this reset. And we could do this a couple different ways. We could just do this, we could move this into reset and just call reset, except we still need these variables at this scope, this outer scope. So I'm just going to do this for now. This is kind of the simple way to do it. It's not the cleanest, but that's okay. So I'm going to save that. And so now when we call reset, it's going to put the position back to the middle top. It's going to get a new random number and populate color and shape with that random number. And so it's basically going to just take the existing piece and move it to the top and create a new shape. The other piece of this that we need to do is move the existing piece before we call reset down into the floor. Let's see, where's our update function? Update. So the way that we want to do that is we want to iterate over each of the shapes tiles, and we don't want to fill it. Here's where we want to transfer it to the floor. Okay, so we can give we can either use floor.tile. So what we want to do, we're going to just mutate the tiles array. So we can say floor.tiles at like an X, and it would be a Y, like a row position and a column position, equals create tile. These are not right. This is not what we want. I'm just kind of putting some placeholder values here. So create tile, and it's going to be is empty is going to be false now, and the color is going to be the piece's color. And we only want to do this, first of all, if column is 1. So our shapes are full of zeros and ones, right? Shapes up here. So they're full of zeros and ones. And we only want to do this if our column is, this is our tile. So if our tile is a 1. So we'll say if not tile. Oops. So we'll say if not tile, return. And so that means if our tile's a 0, we're just going to bail out early. If it is a tile, we're going to transfer it. So we'll say, so this row, now I actually want to have a value for this. I'm going to define some variables here just to make this a little bit clearer. So this is going to be position plus offset. Oops, offset. So this will be X position plus offset is position.x plus the column index. And then the Y position plus offset is going to be the Y position plus row index. And that's what we want to pass in here. Y position plus offset, and X position plus offset. Okay. And so let's see if this works. I don't think this is going to work yet. Oh, current properties of undefined. Okay, so we have an issue we're trying to access some value on our tiles. And the fact that it's such a high number, that 17, makes me think that we're trying to access tiles when tiles doesn't exist, and it doesn't. We haven't exposed tiles on the floor. So if we go up to create floor, we don't have our tiles here, and that's a good thing actually. I don't want to give our piece that much control over the floor. That's a little bit too much implementation to give up in this floor. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to expose a fill tile function, and this fill tile function is going to basically say, like, I'm going to take in an X and a Y position and a tile, or maybe a color, and I will fill in my own tile. And so this is going to use tiles. So this will actually be, I'm going to go back down to our floor.tiles, and I'm going to move this completely up there. Do I want to pass in the color or the tile? I'm just going to pass in the color. Yeah, that'll be good. For now, that'll be good. Maybe forever it'll be good. We'll see. All right, so if I call floor.fill tile, I just need to pass in X position plus offset and Y position plus offset and color. And so then I can go back up to fill tile. I can paste that there. Don't need floor here because this is just tiles. So now this updating this tiles array is internal to our floor object. We don't give up control of that. And let's see. So this is going to take X, Y, and color. And this should be Y, X. And this always gets a little bit confusing to me when I work with X and Y. Maybe row and column is better thing to do here. Row. Yeah, see, I'm even mixing these up right now. So column and row, and then row and column. Because the row is the outer part of the array, and then the column is the inner part of the array. So as long as I'm passing the X in first, it's backwards. You know, we're kind of working with two different systems that have opposite ideas. So the fill rect, wherever that is, right here, stroke rect, that takes an X and a Y, which is like normal math, right? Our normal graph. You kind of think about X and then Y. You think of X first and then Y. The array access is opposite. You have to access the Y or the row before you can access the column. So it gets a little bit confusing. I might mix those up every once in a while. We'll see. So we have this fill tile. We're passing in a color and a row. Or sorry, color, column and a row. And this looks good. So X is a column, Y is the row. So we're filling that, and I think that's what we want to do there. I don't think we have anything I think we're basically finished with transferring, you know, from the pieces perspective. So if we go down to the floor, fill tile, and then what do we want to do here? We need to do something different with render. I think we need to render our tile differently. Let's think about this. So the tile. So we're gonna replace one of our rows, or one of our columns, with a new tile. It's not going to be empty. It's going to have a color, and when we render that, we want to, so this is what we want to do here. So we want to say, instead of a stroke, we want to give this a fill. Fill style is going to be, so now we're going to use color, and fill rect is going to be X, Y tile size. All right, let's see if this works. Oh, that did not work quite. Almost. Something else is going on here. We'll figure that out. But we are at least transferring, we're transferring too much over to the floor, but we're transferring something to the floor, because we can see that when our piece lands, boom, fills up the whole color, the whole column with color, and we get a new piece. So it's kind of half working right now. Let's see if we can figure out what's going on here. All right, so I think there's an issue with how we're calling fill. Let's see, is it how we're filling the tiles or how we're rendering the tiles? I think it's how we're filling the tiles. If we log out, when we create a tile here, if we log that out, let's see what we get. Let's do before and after. Okay, so we have, I should make myself a note here. Tiles before. I'm gonna add a little debug here. So I'm gonna, in our tile, I'm gonna have I'm gonna expose is empty just for now. So let's see here. If this drops, so now our tiles before we have, yeah, okay, so we already are filling it up somewhere before we fill tiles. So where are we doing that? If we go down to our piece update, so if there's no tile, we're going to return. We're getting this. We are filling the tile, and okay, I see what's going on here. So when I created the floor, I should have realized this. I remembered when I was doing this, I was like, this doesn't feel right. It feels like I'm gonna run into problems if I just fill this up with an array instead of filling it up with, you know, some placeholder and mapping over this map array. So the reason why this is an issue is because it's creating the same instance when we're filling it with this array. Each of those is the same instance as every other row. So every column in every row is the same instance. And so when you update one of them, it's going to update all of them. What we want instead is to map over the rows, create a new array for each row, and that way we can update individual cells without affecting the rest of them. So I think we can do this. Array, yeah, okay, so this should work now. So this shouldn't affect the rest of these when one drops. I think this will do it. Fingers crossed. Moment of truth. Hey, there we go. All right, so that's good. So I hope that's clear why that happened, because because when we were just filling this with an array, and this is something really tricky that you know, as soon as I saw it, I kind of recognized what was going on, but I could imagine being stumped, and I have been stumped by this in the past for a long time. You know, it's kind of confusing. But if you're filling this with something, you're filling it with the same reference. So right now, like I'm filling this with an empty array, but every array that this is filled with it points to the same place in memory. And so the way that we get around that is we map over the array entries and create a new array in there in the map, and that will each cell within the row is going to be its own space in memory, which is what we want. Okay, so now that we figured that out, let's get back to the task at hand. I think we're basically done with this part with this video, but if we take a look, so now this is great. We have our pieces falling, we have them landing on the floor. They are not touching each other, so this one's just going to go right on top of the others like that. Yeah, so they're just, you know, they're not stacking on each other yet. We'll get to that because they don't have there's no collision between the falling pieces and the existing pieces. But we'll work on that next. So I'll see you in the next video, and we're going to work on rotating and also making sure that these pieces collide with each other. All right, I'll see you then.